Good afternoon. I'm J.K. Campbell. I chair the Education Division here at Southwestern College, and it's my pleasure to be here today. On behalf of the Education Division, it is my joy to welcome you to our Educators Hall of Fame this afternoon. We're pleased to host you for this special occasion. As Tony mentioned, Southwestern College has a long and proud tradition of producing engaged and caring educators who are dedicated to their students, who are leaders among their peers. And thank you for your work. Thank you for being builders. Thank you for representing your college. Of course, we are proud of you. In October 1999, Southwestern College received a gift from the estate of Marjorie Smith, a 1927 graduate who taught mathematics at Lyons and Dexter, Kansas for 20 years. The gift was to be used to establish a Hall of Fame to honor Southwestern College alumni educators who've made significant contributions in the field of education. And we're honored today to have some of Marjorie's family here to celebrate with us. Verlene LaRocque is the niece of Marjorie and has made the trip to campus to hear about the latest outstanding teachers being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And she has her daughter-in-law Christine with her and her grandson Garrison with her. And I would encourage you to visit with Verlene before you leave. Would you stand, Verlene, please? And she will share some wonderful stories about her aunt, and has her aunt's Southwestern College diploma here at the table, along with a trophy that her aunt received from raising poultry and participating in, it was Capper's Club, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And she won that cup in 1918.
Yep. So I do encourage you to visit with Verlene and get to know her and more about Marjorie. Since the inaugural year of 2000, the Southwestern College Educators Hall of Fame has been held to honor outstanding educators. And the Educators Hall of Fame display is located on the second floor of Mossman Hall in the Center for Teaching Education. And I'd like to call your attention to the beautiful glass creations on the table beside me. These one-of-a-kind awards are given annually to educators who are inducted into the Hall of Fame. They're handcrafted by Mr. Scott Hartley. He was he was with Southwestern class of 97, a science major who went on to use his artistic talents and his knowledge of science to become a master glass blower and artist. He's also a 2016 inductee into the Southwestern Fine Arts Hall of Fame, and we're fortunate to be able to have these unique gifts for our inductees, and that will permanently remind them of their place in our Hall of Fame. Before we begin inducting the new class, I'd like to recognize any previous educators or scholars Hall of Fame inductees who are also here with us today. So please stand, and so we can. I would also take a moment and just acknowledge our administration and our trustees that are here with us today. We appreciate you and your support. Trustees, would you stand for us and so we can recognize you? Thank you. And I would like to take a moment to introduce a couple of students who are currently attending Southwestern and set to become outstanding educators. In conjunction with the Kansas Department of Education, their recognition program, our education division at Southwestern recognizes one elementary and one secondary education major who exemplify the characteristics of outstanding teachers. Our spring 22 Teachers of Promise are elementary education major Annika Newby and secondary math education major Emma Bate. Annika was unable to be with us today due to another commitment, but I would ask Emma to come forward and be recognized. Emma is a mathematics major and just completed student teaching, has already landed a job, will be teaching at Winfield High School, and we're very proud of her. I'd also like to introduce Justin Lamache. Justin is a mid-level math education major, intends to move straight into special education graduate coursework upon completion of his undergraduate degree. Justin is with us today representing the SC Education Builders Student Association. He's an officer in that association and is also set to be an outstanding educator. If you'd stand, Justin. It would not surprise me if both of these current students won't someday be honored with Southwestern Hall of Fame recognition at some time in the future. So while there's an obvious and concerning nationwide gap in the number of young people choosing teaching as a profession, we are certainly proud of Emma and Justin. And we look forward to supporting them as they enter the teaching profession, and I know they will be leaders in their content area, in their assigned buildings, and in the field of education. It is my pleasure now to introduce our 2022 Educator Hall of Fame honorees. I will read the biography of each honoree. We'll ask the honoree to come forward, and our interim president, Mr. Crouch, will present them with their award, and then we'll give them an opportunity to say a few words. So our first inductee is Ruth Franklin McKeefery from the class of 1945. Ruth graduated from Southwestern with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology and psychology and was a member of Pi Gamma Mu, the preeminent interdisciplinary National Social Science Honor Society. And Dr. McKeefery enjoyed a career in university education alongside a lifelong commitment to building programs of volunteers to enhance health and education of adults and children. Upon completion of her Doctorate of Education degree, she served as the Academic Dean of Thomas Edison State University. She developed degree programs at the associate, baccalaureate, and master's level. She also worked with the Washington, D.C. American Council on Education, traveling to military bases in the U.S., Europe, and Asia to review educational programs. After retiring from Thomas Edison State University in 2000, Dr. McKeefery moved to Orlando, Florida, and developed Shepherd's Hope Health Services in collaboration with St. Luke's Methodist Church, and she became the volunteer director for 4 years. This program offers free medical assistance to individuals without health insurance whose income falls at or below the poverty level. And while serving as their director, she secured $500,000 in financial assistance from 15 philanthropic organizations in Central Florida and a $1 million grant from Robert Wood Johnson that supported the health centers for the following 5 years. Each year, the Ruth McKeefery Volunteer Awards go to the outstanding volunteer medical doctor, nurse practitioner, registered nurse, and lay volunteer in Orange County. McKeefery served as the first director of IMPACT, an acronym for Innovative Ministry with Parents, Administrators, Children, and Teachers. She created the program in 2008 at St. Luke's United Methodist Church, which annually provides training for 42 volunteers to serve in the 4th grade at 3 public schools in Orange County. The City of Orlando recognized the many years of volunteer service that Ruth has given, presenting her with the Volunteer of the Year Award in 2014. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. McKeefery as she and her family and friends toured the campus and stopped by the second floor of Mossman. I am very honored to recognize Ruth and her accomplishments this afternoon. Please join me in recognizing Ruth Franklin McKeefery into the Southwestern College Hall of Fame.
Why did I go to college? I wanted to acquire knowledge that would take me beyond where I was as a small town girl in western Kansas. I loved my town, I loved my parents, but I wanted to go beyond. I looked recently at the internet site for Southwestern College, and I was pleased to realize that they still have those same 4 goals the same 4 ministries they had when I started college. The first one was intellectual growth. The second one was individual development. The third one was lifelong learning. And the fourth one was leadership. So I began to ask myself, who was it at Southwestern who really helped me to reach the goals that the college had set for me, as well as for the college? I know that most of you here would not recognize even the names, but I need to say that my psychology professor, William Moneypenny, was the person who helped me to better understand who I was. I remember Lillian Cloud. I worked for Lillian Cloud for 3 years as her assistant in the PE department. I learned all the rules, all the regulations, and how to play all of the games that were taught for the women at Southwestern College. It was wonderful. I used it for the rest of my life. I also met Ada Herr. I want to recognize Ada Herr because she was a real inspiration. Ada Herr was my sociology professor. You've all been in the main building, which was only one of 3 when I was here on the campus. Ada Herr's office was way down on the lower level, in the corner, and she taught sociology. She was a wonderful person, helped me to understand my place in society. She wrote in my yearbook this: as a teacher and student, but also as a friend to friend, I appreciate your relationship. And then she went ahead and she wrote below, relationships, relationships, relationships. They have the deepest meaning. And as I read and reread what she said, I concluded that probably that was what I learned at Southwestern College. I want to share with you briefly just some of the people who made a difference in my life. And I want you to, as you listen, think about whose life have you changed? Did you make a difference in somebody else's life? Who made a difference in your life? Did you remember to say thank you? Dale Dunlap. Dale Dunlap was a senior when I was a freshman. If you look in one of the annuals, you will note that he was the editor of the college yearbook and the college newspaper, both at the same time. And I was the business manager. I had forgotten I was the business manager. I don't like to handle other people's money, but I did. There was another person who signed one of my albums. His name was James Lewis McNeill. Why did I know James? James I knew because his father and my father grew up together on joining farms way out in Seward County. And both of them remained friends for many years. When I got ready to go to Southwestern College, the one thing that my father told me was, Ruth, you've got to introduce yourself to Mr. McLeod, to Mr. McNeill, because Mr. McNeill was his best friend. The nice part about it was that he also had a son who was a freshman at Southwestern that year. And so James, and my son James is not necessarily named for this man. Sorry, James. James and I became acquainted and we did many things together. And he and I were very active in some of the events here on campus, as well as those at Grace Methodist Church, which is at the corner of the campus. James and I, one of my memories is that we went to Wichita to see Porgy and Bess. Now again, keep in mind, I was a young woman from way out in the corner, southwest corner of Kansas. Until that time, I didn't understand what was happening in New York City on Broadway. But together, James and I went to find out all about Porgy and Bess. I treasure the relationship I had with James. I had lost track of him a little bit, but I discovered recently by going on the internet, James is a pediatrician in a community that is in the suburb of one of the large cities in Arizona. And down in the corner, there's a little teeny-weeny picture of James as he is today. He looks just like I remember his father looking when I was at Southwestern College. The second person that I want to remember with you was my very best friend. Her name was Lou Snyder. She became Lou Snyder Carter. She has a very important person here with us today. I named my first daughter Lou, Virginia Lou, and she's back there on the back table. But Lou and I became friends our freshman year at Southwestern. We did many things together, and often we enjoyed just being together and talking. One of our favorite pastimes was to read to each other out of our English literature textbook or out of one of the books that I brought to college from my father's and mother's library in my home. There's a difference of opinion. Lou thought she brought it. I thought I brought it, but it doesn't really matter. We both had copies of 101 famous poems. Can't you just imagine we two smart college students sitting together reading poetry out loud to each other? It is a fond memory, and I will always carry it with me. The summer after my freshman year, I invited Lou to visit me in my home in Liberal, Kansas. And after spending a week together, we went with my parents out to Colorado, way out on the western side of Colorado, high on one of the ridges where the elevation was about 14,000 feet high. And we laughed one day when we came in after being out all day long and realized that Lou was cold. Lou had donned 3 layers of clothing, okay? And so my father laughed, and we all laughed, as Lou took off 1 layer, folded it up, and put it on the bed. She took off a 2nd layer, folded it up, and put it on a bed. But she was just a wonderful, wonderful person to be with, and I was delighted to name my first daughter for her. My favorite photograph of Lou and I together is with my sister Mary on that trip we took together with my parents to Colorado, and we went fishing and we went mountain climbing. And recently, a niece of mine sent me this photograph. I had forgotten it had even been taken. Here was Lou on one end, Ruth was in the middle, my sister Mary was next to her. I like having something to remember her by. And so I thought you would also enjoy knowing that we had a wonderful time, started at Southwestern College. And so I treasure the relationship I had with Lou Snyder Carter. I asked my 3 children, very briefly, if they could write down for me One thing that they thought was important that they remembered, either between me and my husband Bill, who is deceased, and tell me something about why or what difference did it make in their lives. So the first response I got was from Virginia. Virginia's at the back table. And here is what she wrote. My mother, Ruth, has lived in many places during her lifetime. When our family moved to Kansas during my late elementary years, I remember her enthusiasm and love of Kansas. She was involved in many civic and religious organizations. As my parents moved to many places beyond Kansas, I noticed that Mom, as she called me, always bloomed where she was planted. I love that phrase. Always bloomed where she was planted. Virginia said, as I have learned about her time at Southwestern College, I connected her passion to all the group life in her college years, her participation in Linneans, the Methodist Youth Fellowship, student government, co-op, physical education, and Mayfate, and many other things. I know, says Virginia Lou, I know I have learned to adapt to circumstances and contribute to organizations because of her example. I treasure the relationship I have and still have with my daughter, Virginia. My second daughter is Carol. Carol is also here today. Carol wrote, when I asked her what she might comment on, the following. Just 15 years ago, she said, Mom and I took a trip to Switzerland. It was one of the favorite places my mom and dad used to go years ago. What I remember the most was going to the top of the Jungfrau Mountain. It was incredible, but the best part of the experience, she said, was the zip line. You know what a zip line is. Once fitted with a harness, we each climbed about 20 or 30 more feet to the very top. After being connected, with a harness, we were clipped to the zip line. Carol remembers that the zip line was amazing. She says she let go of her hands. I have a photograph of her. Here's the zip line, and Carol, my dancer Carol, has her arms stretched out, and she rode the zip line to the very end. And she says, what a rush. And then right behind me, Mom came gliding along. Such an amazing, wonderful day. And then she added, I was so impressed that at the age of 83, my mom was gung-ho to experience the zip line. How many people at that age would even consider it? Mom has never let age be a barrier to what she wanted to do. She is a wonderful role model. I treasure the relationship I have with my daughters. And then there's James. You know, you would think that 3 children, they would all turn out to be just alike, and they are not. Okay. So I said to James, what can you say? So he wrote the following. Throughout my life, Mom has always given back to society in some way. Dedicated to higher education, a counselor, college administrator, church volunteer, good friend to many. That attitude, he says, has rubbed off on me, a desire to see the bigger picture and gauge if what I was doing is making a positive benefit to the world. She is a very accomplished woman, always learning and curious for new things. She doesn't know what it means to be lazy, always productive. I keep these characteristics, he says, at heart and hope to be as accomplished as she is. I treasure today my relationship to my son, James. And then there is Ida Herr again. Ida Herr, who said, as teacher and student, but also friend to friend. Ida wrote in my yearbook, I appreciate relationships. And then she added it again. Relationships, relationships, relationships. They have the deepest meaning. I want to thank you for coming. Southwestern College was an important period in my life. I hope I've been able to convey to you how important my relationship was to this college, how important my relationship is to my children, to my friends, how important my relationship is to those of you who I have just met, or to the students I met yesterday in the Student Center. Relationships, they are the most important and have the deepest meaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McKeefery. Our next inductee is Lynne Bales Hunter from the class of 1975. Lynne worked in the USD 465 Winfield public school system her entire career and has recently retired. And as former superintendent of the school district, I can attest firsthand that Mrs. Hunter personifies each of the 4 pillars of Southwestern College's vision statement: intellectual growth and career preparation, individual development and Christian values, lifetime learning and responsible citizenship and leadership through service in a world without boundaries. In the classroom, Mrs. Hunter strived to always provide meaningful and relevant content to her students centered around their world and their goals. She extended her curriculum to include the timeliest topics of the day, including anger management, drug and alcohol abuse prevention, STD and sex education, abusive relationships and domestic violence identification and prevention, immigration, and the environment, among many others. She brought the world into the classroom, utilizing community professionals as resources and speakers, and creating a role-playing opportunities for students to test and apply their knowledge in real-world scenarios. She also believes in encouraging students to take a stand on issues in which they passionately believe and in giving them opportunities to have a voice. She models this in her own life, one who passionately and fiercely lives a full life of service and commitment to higher ideals and ethics. She helped her students, colleagues, and others understand and believe that their lives matter in many ways, and they have the power and capacity to positively impact the community, their country, and the world on a daily basis. Please join me in recognizing inductee Lynne Bales Hunter into the Southwestern College Educators Hall of Fame.
I do not like to be in the limelight. Jessica Dibble had to work very hard to convince me to accept this nomination. I was completely flabbergasted that someone had taken the time to put my name forward. I was never a committee chair, a department chair, a redesigning leader type person. I was quiet when sitting at the edges of the faculty meeting. In fact, I don't think I was in charge of anything but my classroom until I was in my late 50s, and that was a once-a-month community dinner at my church. I might be a unique inductee in that my accomplishments are simply what so many other teachers do every single day. They all need recognition and support. I pretty much taught the same class, 9th grade health, 3 to 5 times a day for 35 years. I don't know if I was a slow learner or a perfectionist. I just always wanted to be better. I was not a natural-born teacher, and I had to work hard to be a decent one. And for the first 25 or so years of my career, as I was balancing raising a family, I was challenged by the fact that I was a stereotypical 50s type teacher. That's all I knew. I often heard, "This is my hardest class," and wondered how in the world that could be. I was short on pedagogy, but luckily had many good mentors, had the opportunity to attend excellent workshops, and I was hungry to improve. I was not the beloved teacher like Mrs. Gerber, or National Teacher of the Year like Miss Tabitha. I was just a hard worker like them and so many others. After a few years of teaching, I didn't dream of being that 3rd grade teacher that you loved or the 8th grade math teacher who finally helped you get math. I just told myself I hoped they learned something important, had that somewhere in their head when they needed it, even if they didn't remember where they learned it. One of my priorities was to make their learning relevant, so I found myself always trying new things. Projects such as a simulation activity in which they had to work on a scavenger hunt team with a disability. Projects to promote community service, visiting the prison to hear from people who knew about the possible consequences of drugs. Identifying with a particular emotion and choosing a project such as a poem, a song, a story, or a poster to express that emotion. Listening to stories of the experiences of others surrounding sexual decision-making. And in the end, using YouTube videos in an activity where they responded to a variety of short clips on a topic such as sexual violence or toxic masculinity or human trafficking or being a good dad, etc. And Katie, a former student, reminded me of a project I'd completely forgotten that it was a group of us that worked on called TASMAD, Take a Second, Make a Difference. It was a wonderful program, and I told Katie, as she jogged my memory, that I think, this is a little pessimistic, but I told her I think that might have been the beginning of my realization that society puts a lot of responsibility on teachers, and they want us to keep trying these new things and do miracles, and no matter how well we do, we just get thrown more programs to try to do, because that was a wonderful experience. And the fact that Katie remembered so many details of it, it was a wonderful program, but just faded away in a few years to the next program. And at some point, this career changed from my job to my passion. As I contemplated retirement, considering whether I was losing my relevancy, I remembered one of the most important things I learned, and that is that young people today are starved for open, honest discussions about important topics. I tried to do that. Weirdly, completely weirdly, just a week ago, I got a text message on Facebook from a student I barely remember. Out of the blue, she said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I was a freshman, and I wrote a story about a mansion. And you said something about publishing it. Well, now I'm trying to write a book off of it, and I'm trying to find the original piece that I wrote for your class." I wasn't sure what she was talking about and asked if she'd maybe written about mansions for an English teacher. She very emphatically told me, "Yes, it was for your class because you were the only adult that was worried about me at the time. It was for the final health assignment where we chose to write about anxiety, depression, and I told you about the mansion inside my head." That clicked. It was the Power of Emotions project. I replied, "Oh, I am so sorry. I've retired, but we'll look through some online stuff I saved and look for it, but I'm not too hopeful. Now that you reminded me, it was for a Power of Emotions assignment. I hope you can recreate it. And you know what? It may be even better now. Try to remember your feelings then and take it from there to now. I'm blown away by how much I realize that power every day, even now. Let me know how it goes." To which she replied, "I'll send you my rough draft." That has never happened to me before, something like that. I hope I hear from her. So there I am. Someone thought, and I have no idea who it was, highly enough of my efforts in the classroom to imagine that I resembled those builder ideals and to nominate me to be here. I've been privileged to know many amazing teachers here in Winfield. I've known Winfield Teachers of the Year, a few Kansas Teacher of the Year nominees, and one National Teacher of the Year. But I guess I'm here representing all of those other teachers that I know who work so hard every day caring about kids. Thank you for, recognizing the importance of public school educators and honoring all of them. Thank you. And I also got the best picture up there, too.
Congratulations, Lynne, and thank you. And now we recognize the life and work of Ralph Hanna, class of 1960. Dr. Hanna graduated from Southwestern College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in education after receiving an associate degree from Cali College. His first teaching and coaching job was in Bushton, Kansas, where he taught math and coached football, basketball, and baseball. 3 years later, Hanna received the opportunity to return to Winfield to teach and coach. After teaching and coaching for several years, and no doubt to his innate leadership capacity, he was encouraged to gain a master's degree, which he did at the University of Alabama, and returned to Winfield to become a senior high counselor. 2 years later, he spent a year at the University of Florida to achieve his specialist in education degree. He returned to Winfield in 1970 to help establish the Cali County Special Education Cooperative, which he led for 9 years. In 1976, he completed his doctorate of education. In '79, he left the school district and became the State Farm agent for Winfield, where he continued to support the youth and school districts of Cali County. He served in several community organizations and on the board of the USD 465 Foundation. He retired from State Farm in 1999. I remember taking my first teaching position here in Winfield, and Dr. Hanna was one of the first people I met as a new teacher. He was at teacher orientation and was always there to greet teachers at the beginning of each year. And I will always appreciate him for the support he showed me throughout my professional career. I also got to work with Dr. Hanna when he served on the USD 465 Foundation when I was blessed to be superintendent here in Winfield for a short time. But Hanna married his high school sweetheart, Annetta, in 1955. They had 4 children. She passed away in December of 2000. He later met and married Robin Belden in 2003. They enjoyed golfing, traveling, following the lives and activities of their grandchildren. Ralph loved hunting and fishing. He enjoyed with his family and friends right up to the time of his death in May of 2019. Accepting today on Dr. Hanna's behalf is his son, Ralph Hanna III. Please join me in recognizing inductee Dr. Ralph Hanna into the Southwestern Education Hall of Fame.
Not just Ralph Hanna III, but Barry Hanna and our sister, Sally. You have to come up here and get your picture.
Sally.
Come on. You gotta get your picture taken.
In the middle, okay. They're the bosses.
All right, so I'm Barry, youngest child of Ralph. My brother asked me if I would say a few words, and so listening to my father's bio is a little bit intimidating and make you feel like a slacker if you're not careful. So here's a headline you'll never see on your news feed or your television crawl or reading a newspaper. Young person seeking to amass great wealth seeks a degree in education and a job as a teacher. Like I said, I'm Barry. I'm very happy to be here on Founders Weekend. I did not attend college here. My brother is a graduate. My sister-in-law Carol is a graduate. I'm here with my sister Sally, my wife, Dr. Chris Hanna, who is a doctor of education, and my mother-in-law Felicia. So pretty cool being here. Dad would eat this up. He loves Southwestern College. For his 77th birthday, he was very happy, very proud. With the help of some of his grandkids, made it up every one of the 77 steps. I won't go through his bio stuff because it was covered pretty well. So, special education, the Marilyn McNeish Award for Special Education. My father had a younger sister. She was my Aunt Judy. In the parlance, and we don't use these words anymore, the parlance of the mid-20th century, she was born mentally retarded. And the fact that we don't use these words anymore says a lot. Says a lot about people like my dad. But he was totally devoted to my Aunt Judy. And to know her, if you could, was to know, and this is all through the lens of childhood memories, right? But she embodied unbridled enthusiasm, the love without condition, and when Aunt Judy was coming in for the big hug, you had to be prepared. But Pop was her protector. She was his inspiration. So that's kind of why this award would be very, very special to him. As kids, we were dragged around all over the country while he was seeking his degrees, and we thought it was just a big adventure. Or at least I did. I was the youngest of the crew. My brother, the oldest, probably has a different perspective, but it was just the next thing. But wherever we went, he always made it a point to do special things, to see the world as a bigger place. We were staying in Florida. At the University of Florida, we were staying in barracks, and he still had the checks to prove it, I think, that the accommodations they were paying for cost less than what it cost to board his dog, his prize hunting dog. But they did that because the grant money's limited, and you can spend it kind of however you want. You can stay in a nice place or live cheap and go do some amazing things. So one of my fondest memories from that time was seeing, I think it was the Apollo 1969, Apollo shot that landed on the moon. They took us down to the beach, we camped on the beach, looked through telescopes across the way, and you could see people working on the gantries, the ships, and then I remember the roar of the rocket. And these were the kind of things my dad thought was important. Always an educator. I was not educated. I did not get my degree here at Southwestern, but as a small kid and being Ralph Hanna's son, I was definitely educated here. One really fond memory, and Dad, he was never one to let a teachable moment pass. So, 1972, big, giant Special Olympics meeting, Southwestern College. Some of you may remember it. My Aunt Judy was going to participate in shot put. My job that day was to hold finish line ribbon and help pass out awards. And so Dad called me over and wanted to introduce me to someone. And I'm 8, a very small child. I'm 8 years old, a little bit clueless. And this largest hand I'd ever seen reached down, and it was attached to the biggest arm I have ever seen. And my dad was real big on having good manners and, how do you do, sir, et cetera, and firm handshake and all that. So I was trying. I'm an 8-year-old kid. So later I asked him, Dad, who was that? I said, that was the greatest athlete in the world. That was Rayford Johnson, the 1960 Olympic decathlon champion, gold medal winner. And I think the point Dad was trying to make that day was, this is the greatest athlete in the world, this is how he is serving. This is who he is choosing to spend his time with. The least among us. So that memory of that day sticks out. Special education, his driving passion. Education in general, driving passion. To answer Dr. McKeefery's question, why did I go to college? My house, you didn't get a choice. You're going. Okay. I didn't choose education, my sister did. But it was never a question of if, it was where and how. A lot of stories, I'm not going to go into some of them, but I could go on for hours, I think. Of all of his children, important for us to go to college and graduate. The graduate he was most proud of was my mother, who graduated from college in 1985. She was a Centennial Scholar here. After the rest of us, she was finished raising the rest of us. She went back to school. She got her degree here at Southwestern. She made much better grades than I did. That was the one he was the proudest of. And I think we all were that day. So he could have gone anywhere, done anything he wanted to. But he chose to make his life here in Winfield, and here at the school that he loved. So, if you could ask him, if he was here, you could ask him if he was a wealthy man. He would tell you most certainly.
Ruth and Lynne, thank you again for your work and for representing Southwestern College so well in your professional lives and your professional career and your lives. It was an honor to recognize you here today. And to the family and friends of Ralph, please know that in his life we find a great example. He was a great builder, and he made so many lives brighter and better during his time with us. Again, Southwestern College is grateful to each of you and to all teachers, and we're so grateful for the many meaningful ways you impact the lives of learners, and in doing so make our world a much more caring place. Thank you all.